Issues around the Sahel are many. And we're trying to delve into those with the expertise that's available to us in the persons of two distinguished personalities this evening. Dr. Ishmael Nii Amanor Dodoo is a former senior UN diplomat and policy advisor for integrated strategy for the Sahel, currently working also on innovations and other issues around Project 24/7, if you want to call it that. So we'll be delving into how that is going to work, trade, security, and those things. And also Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso, former Dean and Director of Academic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, and also former Dean and Director of Lesia University of Ghana, Legon. What is the issue? Ghana and the Sahel, advancing trade, security, and regional influence through strategic diplomacy. What are the challenges as the world rapidly drifts the Sahel, home to a diverse mix of nations grappling with complex security, trade, and foreign policy challenges, has increasingly come under the spotlight. Tonight, we're diving deep into how Ghana fits within this dynamic. What are its challenges? Professor and Doc Ishmael will give us answers to some of these questions that we are posing. What is the Sahel? The Sahel region, including Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, is a significant area of concern for ECOWAS members, of which Ghana is one. The region faces security challenges, constant jihadist movement, insurgencies, trafficking, and complex internal crises and conflict spillovers, of which the world is watching to see what happens. Economically, there are opportunities for development and initiatives around cross-border trade. How would these work with migration and development projects, which are crucial perhaps for the stability of the whole of ECOWAS? How do we address these challenges in modern times? The overlap between ECOWAS interventions and G5 Sahel efforts is important as a stable and maybe even subtle way of dealing with some of the things that we are visited with in a secondary level. But will it get worse? Can it get worse? These are some of the things we'll ask our experts to discuss and challenge us and talk to us about this evening. We've already got our first guest on the line, but we'll surely be joined by Dr. Ishmael Dodoo. But our first question today, and that's to our guest who is joining us by phone, Professor Antwi-Danso, an expert, much quoted, much referred to when it comes to issues around security in the sub-region, and somebody that perhaps the first question is important also because he also understands the diplomacy and the international relations angles of these issues. And the question really is, it's an overarching question. Prof, good evening if you're with us. Hello?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers and listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us, Prof. And just wanted to touch very briefly, before we get into the heart of the issues, around whether or not Ghana actually has a foreign policy stance or orientation or a frameworking when it comes to how we deal with our strategy for West Africa and the Sahel. Do we have a foreign policy situation or an orientation that exists already?
Excuse me, the last part of your question was swallowed. Can you repeat?
Right. I just wanted to, just an overarching question really. Does Ghana have an overarching policy in the way it deals with its ECOWAS partners and the Sahel? Strategic policy, is there a framework already existing as to how Ghana addresses the question of its trade and security within the sub-region and the Sahel?
Thank you very much. Ghana's foreign policy generally is pivoted on four main pillars, and it does not have a specific kind of policy towards Sahel per se until the situation changed, and the current government is trying to use diplomacy in bringing the Sahelian countries, the renegade Sahelian countries, back to ECOWAS, because one of the pillars of our foreign policy is good neighborliness. Multilateralism is also another pillar, and if we have ECOWAS, it's a multilateralist organization, and therefore Ghana would love to see this organization not die, And that is why it has a piercing policy towards the Sahel. Another is Pan-Africanism and non-alignment. So within the Pan-Africanist fervor, Ghana would have loved not to lose any Pan-Africanist country from the multilateralist organization ECOWAS. So we do not have a specific tailor-measured kind of policy towards, say, Niger or Burkina or Mali. But within the 4 pillars of our foreign policy, we try to web ourselves and work with other countries within the sub-region.
Okay, Prof, thank you very much. Dr. Dodoo is with us as well. I'm going to call you Prof and I'll call Doc so that we can separate the two of you when I'm asking questions. Doc, same question to you and welcome to the studio. Is there an overarching policy? In your time working with the Sahel, did you see Ghana's foreign policy specific in the way it deals with the Sahel and ECOWAS?
Thank you very much. This is a very useful question. It is one that we have thought about since my days with the United Nations. When it comes to how Ghana as a country really, partner with member states and regional economic commissions such as ECOWAS and regional blocs such as the Sahel or Mano River Union. I don't think that as a country we do have specific foreign relations strategy with this, and we need to have that. I think this is the reason why it seems that the way we are dealing with the Sahel bloc was really ad hoc, and it is refreshing to see that the current government actually have a Sahel envoy. In fact, in my days in the Sahel, last 2 years ago, we do have more than 27 special envoys from partners that are engaging the Sahel in different ways. The entire European Union bloc, each country has specific envoys. Sahel envoy for Sweden, Sahel envoy for Norway, and so on and so forth. So they see the importance of having bilateral relations with the Sahel bloc for their benefits and also perhaps for the benefits of the Sahel regions as well.
Okay, Doctor, back to you, Prof. I'm just going to ask this question. Is diplomacy going to work? Is diplomacy the way forward for Ghana in its relations with these neighboring, let's call them neighboring countries, especially when they are going through their own small revolutions, some of them, and others are simply not on a democratic path at the moment? Is diplomacy the way for Ghana to operate with these countries? Prof, your thoughts?
Well, diplomacy is on an ending process of relating to any country in the world. And that is the only way we can go. We cannot do otherwise. And diplomacy is a broad area. You use all the tools in the tools box to ensure that your relationship with the other country inures to the benefit of both countries. So diplomacy is the way to go. But basically, the Sahelian issue is an issue that has not been properly focused. If we understand what is happening, we would know how to deal with them. Yes, we have trade relationship with them, whether by government or by anything, but our nationals travel across these countries without knowing whether they are in Ghana or whatever. For them, trade is the determining factor. So at Aflao, compatriots who travel across to Togo don't understand your passport and your whatever it is, the bureaucratic processes. They don't understand. So it is that when our people are going to Burkina to bring in onions and tomatoes, they consider it just as trade. The same thing with Niger. There are a lot of Nigerians here in Ghana, a lot of Malians here in Ghana, and because of their presence, we need to have some diplomatic relationship which would inure to our benefit, both countries, all countries. It has security implications also as they cross the borders left and right, especially in this era where we have a lot of trans-border crimes. So whether you like it or not, you would use diplomacy one way or the other, bilateral agreement or multilateral agreements to be able to relate to the other countries. And with the Sahelian countries, this is what is happening.
Okay, Doc, you're here. You've been there. You know the situation on the ground. Prof has touched a little bit on the security implications. We'll get into that as well. Right. But from where you sat, and the issue of diplomacy, would it work, for example, with a military regime? Let's not say a bad military regime, but a military regime that has got a job to do for itself as a sovereign nation, and you, as Ghana, trying to work with them. Have we seen any sort of result from that kind of diplomacy?
I think the big question that we need to ask is whether a democratic country such as Ghana, and for that matter, other African countries or West African countries that are democratic, Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal, whether they relating with a military junta or a military run countries such as Mali, Niger, Burkina is the right thing to do. I think a lot of people tend to, when they think about diplomacy and partnerships among countries, and this is actually the reasons why ECOWAS had challenges with the coup d'etat with the head of state in Mali, Niger, Burkina, because it's branded as a military regime. But the key question we need to actually interrogate is that what actually led to the causes that led to the military incursion, takeover in the country. The factors are actually necessarily developmental, and they were factors that were as it were generated from even the citizens themselves, who gave the military junta the power and the legitimacy to be able to take over. So then, in a sense, if you look at democratic nations, how citizens give power to elect leaders that are elected, versus what we're saying where the whole nation said, look, what is happening? We really need somebody who has the military background to be able to take over and address some of the social, economic issues that we do have, as well as the military issues. So there's some level of legitimacy that the head of states have. And therefore, it is important that as a country, like Ghana, who has a very serious leadership and convening power within the sub-region, to find strategic and innovative ways to engage in these military juntas.
Right.
And of course, as a country, we also have been through the process.
Right.
And we're now democratic. So we really understand the journey to move from military regime to a democratic regime. And we do understand that it's not going to be an overnight, especially where a nation is confronted with either two, when they were led by a democratic government, the state of corruption, the influence, the strong influence of external parties such as France on the economy, and the abject poverty that is increasing. This juxtaposing that on the effects of the terrorism that we are trying to address.
Right.
Then you have climate action and all the other things that are giving serious toll on the community. And this military regime understands the problems that the community were facing and is now beginning to roll back some of the challenges that the democratic regime could not
failed to do.
Failed
right.
to do.
Okay.
So then it's important that you regard the structure of their sovereignty and the way they want to run it. You have to really pay attention to it and respect that. Because the will of the people is to have the military junta to actually continue to lead them.
That's an interesting. If it really is the will of the people,
it's the will of the people,
right?
And you can see the uproar everywhere. Now you see the name Burkina Faso Traore. Everybody talks about him and so on. And then when you look at the Niger situation, it's all about the natural resource, uranium, and the way the uranium is exploited versus what is happening today,
right? And
the dividends that is coming to the people. You think that it's extremely important that we interrogate situation on case-by-case basis and find the best route to address it. Diplomacy is important in this case. Engaging them to really understand where they're going, how you can help them.
This is the problem,
yes.
And the Prof too, you can chip in on this one. The problem of recognizing a government that is not duly elected. You might approve of the way they're going, but is it the place for a sovereign nation like Ghana, democratically placed, to say, I recognize a military regime, whatever it is, it's illegal. I mean, are we allowed diplomatically to do that? Is that the way to go? I'll ask Prof, then I'll come to you on that one.
Okay.
Prof, your thoughts? Hello, Prof. I think we may have lost Professor Antwi-Danso, so I'm going to let you go on.
Hello, I'm here.
So did you hear what
Hello?
I said? Yes, sir. So did you hear what I said?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Did you hear the question?
I'm saying I'm very happy that this question has been raised.
Okay.
Who determines whether a country is democratic or non-democratic?
Right. I hope that's a rhetorical question.
Yes, bottom line is people.
Right.
And when they have such type of governance, ours is to relate to them, no matter how they are. And if we want them to change, that is where diplomacy comes. That is where we influence where things are done. But who are we to determine that Burkina Faso has no right to be led by Traore? Who are we? Are we saying Ghana is a democratic country and we should deal with a country like Israel better than we deal with Burkina Faso?
Right.
Come on, give me a break.
Okay.
We have no right under the sun to determine whether Pinochet is a good leader or whatever it is. Democracy has been foisted on us with some parameters, and we are sitting down here checking those parameters. Do we have a constitution check? Do we have a four-year, elections check? All those checks, we check and we say Ghana is democratic. But are we really democratic, or we are just trying to play semblance of democracy? Every country has a sovereign right. The people of Burkina Faso and of those countries have the right to choose the type of governance they want. If they don't like Traore, they will find a way of choosing who they want or what they want, what form of governance they want. So for me, in diplomacy, the type of governance should not matter so much. The type of relationship that would inure to the benefit of both countries is what is important. We dealt with the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union. We claim it was a communist country, and we all derided communism because the West says communism is not good. But the Soviet Union gave us a lot. They gave the third world a lot. And that is what we should be interested in. What would be our relationship with the Soviet Union so that it inures to our benefit? We are dealing with Israel. We are dealing with Iran. We are dealing with several other countries with different forms of governance system. We are dealing with theocratic countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. We are dealing with them. Are we saying they are not democratic, so we don't have to deal with them? So let us not put democracy as a variable in determining diplomacy. Absolutely not. It's people to people, state to state kind of relationship. That's my take on that.
Okay. Thanks for that. I'm going to ask you the same question, Ishmael. That's Doc. What are your thoughts on what Prof has just said? You were going that way anyway, but what are your thoughts?
I agree with Prof. I think the bottom line is, the type of governance, and then the question is governance for what? We always have to have at the back of our mind that when there's a construct of political leadership, whichever form it takes, whether it's theocracy or oligarchy or dictatorial or democratic, one of the things that we need to be aware of is that it has to lead to a certain expected end, and the end that it has to lead to is a construct of a governance that ensure that the will of the people and the needs and aspirations of citizens are dealt with. Now most African countries are dealing with China. There are a lot of challenges when people talk about the human rights challenges and so on, and some of the dictatorial tendencies that the Chinese leadership and
right, the way they handle their
the way they handle things.
Mm-hmm.
We disagree with those, but yet we recognize China as a sovereign state, and we actually engage China in this UN Security Council in similar fashion as we engage the so-called highly democratic countries such as the US and so on. Now we see also in the United States where we have a leader who is flouting many international treaties and wanting to do so many things that it's at variance with the Constitution, toppling Constitution, doing all kinds of things. Nobody sees this as a treasonable effect, or nobody sees it as anti-democratic. So the point I'm trying to make is that, whereas I'm not saying, well, coup d'etat is the way to go, I'm saying is that when the country find themselves in a state of flux and they are trying to find the best solutions for how they maintain stability, they maintain peace, and start looking at development for themselves. And they chose the path of getting a military junta. And that path is actually yielding dividends and results which are very evidential to them. We have to respect that. This is the country. They have the right to determine the type of political leadership they have. Now, we as country, as Ghana, noting the special relationship that we have with the Sahelian bloc. I mean, this is a country where, we procure goods and services for them. They use our ports. We have tribes that are similarly to them.
Cross-border tribes,
tribes. And their economy is really integrated with the economy. It is extremely important that we find the right way to engage them, and diplomacy is the way to do it. So the question then we need to ask ourselves, and which I believe is and I commend the effort of the current government to have a special envoy, is to say, how do we structure a special relationship with you, where we can help you to engender the peace and stability of the country, and if we have to help you to improve your democratic principles, then we'll be able to
without interfering.
Without interfering,
right? Okay.
But we can do that over time, and that's why I really concur with Prof's point, because we really need to respect the will of the people and the sovereign will of the state, and how they want to lay out the path or the trajectory of their development
agenda. Right. Okay, if you're just joining us, you're on TownHall Talk. It's 5:37. My guest, Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso, former Dean and Director of Academic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College. Previously was the Director at the University of Ghana, Legon for Lesia. And Dr. Ishmael Nii Amanor Dodoo, former senior UN diplomat and policy advisor for the integrated strategy for the Sahel. Well known in UN circles. Anyway, the two of them we're diving deep into some of the issues around our relationship with the Sahel and ECOWAS. Now, Prof, back to you. And this is because you have many publications and you've spoken many times about security, the dangers of a lack of security, and what our posture should be vis-a-vis security, the challenges that are faced by trafficking, and all forms of trafficking, not just drugs, but movement of people trafficking, amongst other things, and insurgency, jihadist movements. These challenges, how serious are these challenges to Ghana, and or is it exaggerated? I mean, if you had to give a landscape view today of security and challenge for Ghana, what would you say?
Well, we have a proverb in the Akan which says that to wait, like when the beard of your neighbor is burning, all you have to do is to take security measures for yours by providing water near you. In fact, a friend of mine has recouched this and said, if your neighbor's beard is burning, the best is to shave yours off. And in this sense, it is the question of security. Well, all around us, Ghana seems to be an island where insecurity is concerned. The three Sahelian countries we are talking about have been inundated by transnational crimes, especially terrorism. And, it has taken them a lot. It has taken them a lot in terms of security problems, economic problems, outbreak, whatever it is. In fact, the three countries have suffered a lot where terrorism is concerned. It has a long history. I don't want to go into that. But basically, if these countries are having these problems, they affect us directly and indirectly. Directly, it means we have to up the ante in our security measures. Today, as I speak, we have about 15 FOBs, forward operating battalions, in the north. Not only because of our own internal struggles, but especially so that terrorism does not descend. If you look at the map of Burkina Faso in 1919, 1920, 2021, you will see that 2/3 of the country belongs to the terrorists, and only a small part belongs to the government. And that the last terrorist attack in 2021, for example, was only 1 kilometer away from the Ghana's border. Today, most of the Fulanis rush into Ghana as safe havens and go back to do their nefarious activities. So the question of security is very, very important. Meanwhile, terrorism thrives on gun running. The amount of guns that are smuggled across borders to go and do these things, it's amazing. My friend Professor Vladimir tells us that within Ghana alone, there are about 3 million single units of guns unregistered. This is serious. And if terrorism is just across our border, it means most of these guns can be smuggled also from the terrorist areas into our territory for other nefarious activities. So when you talk of security, every country is battling with security, and especially within our borders, which are very, very porous, we have a long way to go. It's very, very important that we take security as a serious matter. Smuggling of goods, smuggling of guns, smuggling of everything that helps in perpetrating terrorism. Besides, we have pockets of instability in our own country, Boku, Yendi, several other places in the country. And terrorism thrives on these areas. I've warned several times on radio and television that we must seek to silence the guns in these areas. Because if you look at what happened in Mali, it was because of these internecine feuds that one of the factions invited Jenin, and they invited the Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, Akim, to come to Mali to help them. One day, maybe, who knows, the Kusasis may invite or the Mampusis may invite. And you see the intensity of the war over there, you might think it is the usual Kusasi-Mampusi war. No. Some terrorists have entered and they are helping one of the factions. Then they get a place to stay. So for me, as a student of and researcher and writer in terrorism, I always believe that we don't have to take our security for granted. We don't have to say, oh, Ghana, God is with us, and that sort of thing. Whoever thought that areas like Iraq and that sort of thing would have terrorism? But all of a sudden, this is a place where Allah is the supreme and everybody is Allah. So how come terrorism started from there? So for heaven's sake, let us not take our security for granted.
Right. Okay. Let's not take it for granted. And a fairly grim picture. So within all of this, we continue to be this safe haven, as Prof describes it. But unfortunately, that also leads to it being used because of the nature of our porous borders. You're also trying to develop a Ghanaian economy somehow. In all of this, we are trying. We've been trying and trying to trade with our neighbors. With security challenges like what Prof has outlined, how do we possibly engage in trade of any sort, cross-border trade or otherwise?
Yeah, this is a very, very important question. And it's one that we need to critically reflect because if you look at cross-border trade and regional integration, you would see that if Ghana, it's very prepositioned to be able to engage the Sahelian blocs much more than any other country, and simply because of, apart from the historical ties that we do have with them, our geoposition also enables a lot of things, movement of goods and services to go to the Sahel region, and so we are an important ally to the Sahel region. But then, as we rightly explained, because of our porous borders, we also have the vulnerability to the exposure of having the movement of these terrorists in and out. So really what is important is for us to really to think about how we can construct some type of a regional security apparatus that in engaging with the Sahel bloc. This is why also engaging them through diplomatic channels is very important. So the first is to be able to have we should establish a regional security exchange between them in terms of working on some early warning signals, exchanging intelligence, the movement of terrorists in and out, and be able to understand where they are and structure a process to be able to protect us. The other thing is also to deal with the movement of the small arms and light weapons that are everywhere. 3 million in Ghana is very challenging, and we do also know that there were certain border areas where they actually manufacture these guns, and some of these are well known. So we need to be able to tackle these places and get the guns out of the hands of this population. Now we also need to work very closely with the ECOWAS standby force. We need to work very closely with the standby force and really capacitate the standby force so that they can do the work that we need to do, that regional cooperation or regional entities like ECOWAS will be able to do. We need to strengthen our regional cooperation against the acts of terrorism, against the incursion of terrorists, and against movements of guns around our border areas and so on. We need to really strengthen that regional cooperation. I think it's the weakest point within ECOWAS, and that's why the terrorists are able to actually grow. The other point is also to, and this is for me the most critical issue. As the Prof said, a terrorist is not a terrorist without a gun or without some form of armory, all right, or some sophisticated weapon. Now the question one asks is, who actually manufacture these weapons? What is the supply chain of these weapons? How can we follow the supply chain of these weapons to the place where it is manufactured to be able to deal with the issue? And when we interrogate this question, you will see that the value chain of a weapon actually starts from places external to our country. So if truly we really want to solve the Sahel problem, the relationship between our European partners or the international bases where certain types of weapons are manufactured and the West African state has to be very strong, and we need to have a dispassionate conversation around this, a round table where we face the truth. We know the companies that are manufacturing these weapons, we know where they are, we know the routes where these weapons pass, and yet everybody turns blind eye and says, well, let us solve the Sahel problem through diplomacy and so on. I think we also have to really tackle this issue very, very spot on. And it is one area or one aspect of solving the Sahel problem which we have not been able to address.
To properly address. Prof, coming back to looking again back on security for a moment again, and you hear Doc advocating for a strengthening, if you like, of the ECOWAS and the way it's doing its job, and improving perhaps things like training, intelligence sharing, logistics, and even peacekeeping capacity. Is that the way you're seeing the thing from where you sit? And what do you talk to when you're talking to military personnel on a regular basis around these same issues, which is what you've been doing?
Well, that is the essence of diplomacy. If you don't have good relationship with your neighbors, you can't do all that you're talking about. Intelligence sharing, cooperation, military cooperation, and support for each other and that kind of thing. So basically, whether or not we like the regimes in these countries, we need to cooperate. My brother mentioned the ECOWAS standby force. In fact, integration kicks away all these problems within an integrated area. Look at Europe. There's not any thinking that one day one country in Europe will fight another country in Europe, because Europe is so integrated and they have a NATO to stand for them as a standby force. So it is that in ECOWAS is what we were trying to do. But we paid lip service to the process. For a long time, this standby force has been on the drawing board and has still not been established. Meanwhile, what we need to do is to cooperate with each other. Ghana, Ivory Coast, we always need to be talking and to be training together, maybe be exchanging personnel and notes and whatnot. And this one has been going on very well. At the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, for example, there are not less than about 13, 14 or 15 African countries whose personnel are being trained here. We train them here, and it's good for inter-African relationship that way. In West Africa, the same way. Almost all the West African countries have their students with us. And we also send students there. We exchange notes. We exercise together and things like that. It's part of diplomacy. So within the sub-region, if all these things are ongoing, then we can cooperate on several other security issues. Intelligence sharing, the gun running issue we are talking about. Okay. All these things need to be done in some multilateral or bilateral way in order to keep the peace within the sub-region. Okay. Because when there is a spillover, there's nothing we can do because we don't have a standby force. Right. So I believe that this is where diplomacy, this is where relationship with other countries, neighboring or even far, is very, very, very important.
Okay. All right. Town Hall Talk, if you're just joining us, my guests are delving into some of the security challenges for Ghana as a country and also our relationships within the subcontinent, Sahel and ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. And what are the linkages between one type of problem and the other is also something we'll be talking about. But because it's Town Hall Talk, we also open the phone lines. And we have two contributors today. And the first one today, who's got his own curiosity questions that he wants to ask, Farouk Al-Wahab. He's a diplomatic and investments consultant, and he has his own questions that we're going to put out there to our two guests. Farouk, good evening. How are you?
I'm very fine, sir. How are you too?
I'm alive. That's the best I can tell you. You've been listening to the program, and you've heard our two distinguished panel today. What do you want to contribute, or what the question do you have for either of our panel members?
I must say that I don't have a question per se for any of them, just also maybe to contribute to the topic and then the discussions on the table. I think we're discussing about ECOWAS, and I've heard as you mentioned, distinguished brothers, the panelists already contributing, which are some of the very fundamental and I will call it very vital protocols which the ECOWAS seems to stand for. But indeed, that is not what some of us we see it, because we've been engaged with other areas, jurisdictions where they have call it union or call it an ECOWAS structure in the South Pacific or the Caribbean countries that we will say that they are not very, very strong economically in terms of population, etc. But they've structured themselves well. Now, an issue with ECOWAS. ECOWAS emerged from 1975. It's very established, let's call it that way, from 1975 till today. But if you compare the ECOWAS to the European Union, which is a very, 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 you can't even compare in terms of how they position themselves diplomatically, financially, security, etc. I would take it from the fact of a security, not only, but rather the financial security of the ECOWAS member countries. Let's take it for instance. Our country, Ghana, was on her knees some couple of years ago, 3 years ago, stand to be corrected. We're looking for only an amount of $3 billion, just only to do what? To revamp our economy. Are we saying that 15 member countries, being members of an organization called ECOWAS, which in my view is older, directly, indirectly, more than the European Union, which got actively involved by each other in the early 90s during Barroso's time? So how can Nigeria, Togo, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and all the member countries, 15 countries, and they could not come to the aid of their member nation, call it their friend or a sister nation in this regard? So, must it be that Ghana or the ECOWAS didn't know that Ghana was just back and forth, diplomacy, going to Japan, talking to Germany to talk to IMF, etc.? So we can talk about security. Yes, it is true, but that in a spillover, because individual member countries, when you take the English four, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Gambia, Liberia, Ghana, 5 of them, and you talk about the French, the Sahel, they have their peculiar issues. But in the case of, let's say, Ghana, we don't have anything that is to say that we have maybe active rebellion, terrorism, and Sawad and Sawi and Sadin, all these organizations. It is very difficult Ghana to have that. Sierra Leone had their fair share of a fight sometimes, dragged into, how do we call it, genocide. So Liberia, all these things, I will say that it has just gone off. Nigeria, coup d'etats, etc., except the Boko Haram that is active there. But spillover on the West Africa belt will be a little bit difficult. But then a spillover of economic hardship, that is one of the main reasons. And then one of the reasons, in my view, ECOWAS seems to fall short is the fact that a woman leaves Accra with an amount of only not more than 10,000 Ghana cedis going to Nigeria to buy goods, etc., to come back to Ghana to sell, or Togo, etc. What has ECOWAS done with the border controls? Leave that one aside, but the small posts, police barriers, etc. These are more dangerous, and this is quite disturbing and then distracting the activities of ECOWAS more than the security that we always keep talking about. Because we are talking about the economy. The Europeans are boastful of the EEC, the European Union, the EUC, because of their economic power and assistance to each other. Germany, they bailed Greece out in some 10, 12 years ago, when Greece was just on the verge of being sold out, if you put it in that way. The Germans stood up and took up Greece and paid for the salaries of even the governments for a period of about 5 months or 6 months before Greece could stand up. Are we going to see something like that? We can always, the individual countries can, of course, manage their security affairs somehow. I don't see even, we have made mention of the ECOWAS standby force, ECOWAS standby. There cannot be any ECOWAS standby forces. There can be. Because in terms of the protocols that has to originate the establishment of that ECOWAS forces, let's go back to Abuja and find out even what are the kind of, we were talking about forces. Forces are the human beings, the soldiers, yes. But what are they to work with? They are to work with arms and ammunition, etc. Let's look at the list of the ECOWAS member countries. The weaponry, what do they have? They have nothing.
Okay.
We know the Portugal, we can bring it up. They don't have anything.
All right.
They are not even in our country. We don't have that kind of materials, call it guns, whatever, that if in case of anything, that we can also go into assist, Togo assist, or Togo assisting us.
All right.
We don't have.
Farouk.
So until we, yes, let me hear you.
Yeah, I need for to actually get my panelists to comment on what you said. So if you say too much, then we'll lose some of the points you've made. Yeah. Okay. All right. Several points made there, but I'm cutting Farouk so that both you and Prof can address them. He sees no hope for ECOWAS because it's not ready to even help fellow or sister countries, and that in total there's a sum total there, because he's speaking because of that. Even the idea of a common force is almost an impossibility. I'll start with you, Doc, then I'll ask you, Prof, as well, to comment on what Farouk has said.
Thank you very much. I've always wondered, I thank the caller. He shared some very interesting insights. I've always wondered, ECOWAS and really reflecting what more could they do to actually live up to expectation. When you look at ECOWAS, Economic Commission for West African States, I mean, the issue is that ECOWAS is actually an economic commission. It was the original intention is actually to build the economy, to integrate the economies of West African states. Then you cannot achieve economic stability or sustainability without political stability, and then the issue of security started coming in. So ECOWAS, by all intents and purposes, is not constructed to be able to deal with this level of security.
I'm not going to stop you because I'm challenging what you're saying, but we have seen ECOWAS mobilize militarily. We've seen it. It's been evidenced through your own personal experience with ECOMIL and Liberia and everything else.
Correct. I mean, but then it is the coalition of the willing. It is the voluntarism of the countries that actually make it happen. It was at a time when you have head of states who are very committed to ensuring peace and stability across West Africa, and they pool forces to do it. If you have an institution that is not like NATO, where naturally member states contribute to the equipment and the capacity of that institution, and member states sign up to protocols and they actually live out to the protocols, then what you have is an ad hoc interventions by individual heads of state who really want to make something happen. And I think the situation we are faced now is you have individual heads of state who don't think that they should step to the plate and support other countries because they themselves have challenges in their own country, and that is what is affecting ECOWAS. And I believe that we need to have some kind of restructuring. ECOWAS need to strengthen its protocols. The protocols must not be ad hoc. It must be protocols that really not just anchored on voluntary, but protocols that is
conditional.
Yeah,
right.
Number one. And two, the ECOWAS need to be capacitated. Head of state need to contribute to the capacitation of ECOWAS, and they need to direct the resources that is going there.
Okay, all right.
And I think this is something that would also help if we really want ECOWAS to work in the way it's working. Yeah.
Right. Okay, we're also going to go to our other. There's a Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso has been waiting as well. I want you to contribute again. Actually, not a good story the way Farouk was describing ECOWAS today. Prof, from your perspective, and the failure, if you will, not the failure, but inability, if you like, of ECOWAS to mobilize the way it used to when there was a coalition of the willing. Is that dangerous for the sub-region? Is it a problem for us going forward? Professor, if you're there, sorry.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yes, I've been listening quietly.
Yes.
The point is that I understand the disappointment and the anger of our friend who called in. The point is this, that yes, it seems ECOWAS has failed. No, I don't think it's a failure. ECOWAS has achieved a lot. The terrain was rough, very, very rough. 12 of the 15 African countries who build themselves to perform ECOWAS are labeled as underdeveloped. In fact, there is so much into that. Only 3 countries are developing. So that alone is a problem. Number 2, in building an integrated area, you need to strengthen yourselves economically. Unfortunately, a few years after ECOWAS has been formed, 75, by 1980, we all went into structural adjustment. Almost every country was bankrupt. And that alone caused every country to put integration at the back burner. So we must understand the failures or the hiccuping nature of ECOWAS a little. True, we don't have leadership in ECOWAS. The EU is being propelled by the combination of the strength of Germany and France.
Yeah.
And they whip everybody into order. ECOWAS lacks that leadership. Nigeria is a sleeping giant. Ghana is a talker. So we must understand that ECOWAS has a problem. And this lack of leadership, this lack of fundamental financial might is what is killing ECOWAS. The third thing is this, that there is no, research has shown that, and Professor Sabwadi has shown it in his book, without a community security, forget about integration. You see, EU is backed seriously by NATO, whether we like it or not, and the OSCE. And therefore, no kind of internal upheavals will lead to disintegration. But in Africa, when any of the integrated schemes in Africa, whether EAC, SADC, or ECOWAS, or ECAS, or AMU, none of them has a backing where the whole territory is guarded so that there will be no disintegration. Look at ECOWAS. 75 we started. By 89, just 10 years after that, we started having disintegration through insurgencies, Liberia, Sierra Leone, etc., etc. But if we had a standby force and community security around that time, we would have been able to stem the tide. We couldn't. And that disintegration created a big hole in ECOWAS progress forward. Finally, ECOWAS failed to increase economic lever. That is, boost intra-African trade or intra-West African trade, but our trade in West Africa is only 10% intra-West African trade. It means we trade 90% with the outside world, which is not good also for integration. And we don't have a common currency. So we must understand that ECOWAS has a problem, and we must have the patience and help ECOWAS to grow. We have no right not to integrate. Right. But these are the real problems, hiccuping problems in the way of ECOWAS. Bad governance has also taken the toll on ECOWAS. So yes, ECOWAS is trying, but then there are genuine problems.
Right. Okay. Genuine problems is what we're going to leave it there with ECOWAS. There's a bigger picture, of course, of Sahel, and the fact of the matter is that there's three countries who are both on both sides of this. That's why we talk about ECOWAS as if it's it. We're talking about the Sahel, but there's Mali, Niger, and the upper part of the western part of Burkina Faso that are Sahel. That's why it's also Sahel. It's all part of the same unfortunate conversation that we're having. So they're totally related, just for listeners so that we get it. There's an interesting thing about people wanting a standby force or an intervening force, because you both gentlemen spoke very seriously about who are we to interfere in somebody's governance, whether it's by coup or diplomacy or whatever. So then at what moment did you think it was okay for you to tell me you now need a standby force? To do what? To interfere in these same countries you say they have a right to manage their own affairs. Which is it? Do you want them to be interfered with or not? I need an answer very briefly from both of you on this, and then we'll go to our second contributor. Prof, I'll come to you.
Right. No. A standby force is very necessary for integration, because whether we like it or not, when the trouble started, we had a standby. We had a force to go in. We formed ECOMOG.
Right.
Whether we like it or not, I mean, the situation demanded that we should intervene. How do we intervene? One country to intervene, it didn't work. So by the protocols that we have, the mechanism, for example, it allowed us to have troop contributing countries pulling their resources together and going to Liberia and Sierra Leone to go and douse the fire. And this is indicative of the very fact that if you are integrating us, because if we integrate, it will be like one country. So if you are integrating like one country, EU is now virtually one country. So ECOWAS would have been one country of 15 members. And therefore, getting a standby force to make sure that every country is quiet was a sine qua non.
Okay.
As Abwadi has indicated.
Okay.
And I believe that if we hadn't dismantled ECOMOG, it would have helped a lot. We say we are developing individually. A railway line from Bobo Dioulasso all the way to Niger, for example, has been earmarked by the colonialists long ago. It is there somehow, from Dakar, passing through Bobo Dioulasso, all the way to Nigeria. Now, if you have terrorists in all these areas that I'm talking about, what happens? That rail line that keeps trade booming for West Africa would have been lost. So for a standby force is very, very necessary. Look, let us not pay lip service to this standby force. It's very necessary. The only problem is that whose troops, whose equipment, whose training, etc. doctrine.
Okay.
The French-speaking countries have their doctrine. We have our doctrine. Several other countries have their doctrines. So there are problems in really creating the standby force, and then the political order also. For me, it is a sine qua non to our development as a sub-region.
Okay, as a sub-region, and also beneficial for Ghana. Very briefly, your thoughts, Dr. Ishmael, on this point.
Yeah, my thoughts are similar to Prof's. That standby force is very necessary.
It's without question. There must be.
It must be. And
Yeah. Okay. Then I'm going to ask you: at what time does the standby force intervene? I mean, at what moment did you decide that you had the permission to intervene in a sovereign nation?
Well, a standby force actually, intervenes in a situation when you have a sovereign state falling apart because
you decided that it was falling apart.
Well, because I mean, if there's a terrorist attack on a country,
right,
then you know that there are external forces which are illegitimate external force who have banded themselves as bandits, have come in, and so then the standby force protects that from happening. At the same time, also internally, if you have a standby force, then if there's going to be some manipulation within internal peace and stability, the fact that there's a standby force also threatens or makes whoever is making these decisions think twice about it. So I think there are merits and demerits of that, but truly the merits is far outweigh the demerits that we're saying.
Right.
The actual thing also is that when it comes to ECOWAS, we have to look at integration not as a voluntary, proposition, but as maybe a conditionality for how we work together and bond together and build our economies together. Because truly, you are looking at how do you then build up economies of scale. If you look at the definition for the UN perspective, the definition of Sahel actually spans across 10 countries. All right, we're looking at the G5 Sahel, Mali, Niger, Burkina, Guinea, Mauritania, and then you have the others, the northern Nigeria, the northern Cameroon, and others apart. So you look at the whole Sahelian bloc; they are the same group of people. Right. Now, the Sahel region itself has tremendous opportunities for trade, tremendous opportunities for really being able to construct or being able to contribute to global economic system in terms of where we are today with digital revolution. Most of the strategic minerals that really underpin the digital revolution today, 60 to 70% are found in this block. So it's a very, very strategic block for us.
Right.
And as Ghana, if we were to link our trade or our economies with the Sahel countries in terms of adding value to strategic minerals and focusing on production, then I think that we will be able to start contributing meaningfully to the global supply chain system.
Right.
And
both of you gentlemen didn't address the issue of when one of the neighbors, and you see, Prof mentioned the whole thing about the beard and putting the fire out. But when Ghana needed money, we couldn't, from the 15 members, we couldn't find that money. Yep. We had to go externally. I don't want you to comment on it because we're talking about every one of us being broke, but it's something to keep at the back of our minds. Our second contributor, whose comments I want you both to comment on, has been on Zoom for a minute. Frederick Brooks, he's Chief Executive Officer of Africa Again. So I just want us to hear his comments as well, and any questions he may have. Then both of you will tackle those statements that he makes and his challenges. Frederick, thank you so much for your patience, and good evening. How are you?
Yeah, good evening. I'm doing very great, and I've been enjoying the conversation as well. Very, very good analysis from Doc and Prof. I have a position that is quite an interesting one. I believe that we've actually failed to address the fundamental failures of the region. And when you look at the motivations of the main actors of this crimes or of this destruction, you ask yourself whether we have any country that has integrity within the continent or within the sub-region to actually intervene. Prof talked about the ECOMOC. I mean, I have read a little, on the ECOMOC soldiers who were deployed somewhere around the 90s to Sierra Leone to curtail, the military or the government takeover. And you seek to ask questions whether or not we are so obsessed with the military approach because we lack strategic policies to actually man, affairs when it comes to, conversations like this. I mean, for instance, you look at or you listen to some of the motivations and you just get to understand that the people, get so fed up with the weaker governance, with the lack of policies, with extreme poverty, to the point where now they seem to generate that kind of Stockholm syndrome with rebels or with people who just want to take power from the government. And so, I mean, you ask yourself, I mean, coming from weaker governance, poor roads, poor healthcare and all that. I mean, apart from the military intervention, I mean, what are some of the mitigating, policies what we are actually putting in place to solve the fundamental problem? That is the weaker governance, that is the poverty. And that has always been my problem. I mean, I think that the Allied Command Operations, did a very good job in, spending a lot and also allocating a lot into research, into finding out the motivations, the emotions of the people. I mean, to the point that now you have people glorifying something in the past we saw as an abomination. Now, you look at a coup leader today and you ask yourself whether the coup leader is more loved than a democratic leader. That is because the people have realized that, well, the democratic leaders or the democratic regimes are should I say, operating benevolent dictatorship, or operating benevolent military regimes, where it's like the leader. It's one party takes all, the leader takes all, where the people are not actually factored. In core decisions. Now, my point has been, and which is going to be a question at the end of it all, is that when we put out our military standby operations whatsoever, to ensure that the rebels and all those people are fought, what are the contingent measures that we try to put in place to solve the core problem? That is the poverty, that is the unemployment. Now you have a very interesting matter where even now graduates from universities are signing up and joining extremist groups. And that should be a concern, because the person knows that I'm going to finish the university, I wouldn't have any job to do. And when you look at some of these offers from this extremist group, the person looks at it and be like, okay, God, I'm just going to go for the kill because I'm just going to get. I think that we had even a situation where our very own graduate from the KUSC had to sign to join Boko Haram or the ISIS. I stand to be corrected. And so I think that first, we lack the integrity to address some of these challenges because the motivations of some of this conflict is something we're also dealing with that we've not been able to manage. And so you realize that, most of the democratic leaders, they became vulnerable to the point that instead of advising coup leaders now, they look at the mood. And for me, the mood is very, very important. Now you see a lot of footballers, world, renowned persons and all that, throwing in their support for a coup leader, to the point where even presidents within democratic regimes also join in to also pay visits and cash visits and all that. And so for me, my question and my position has always been, we concentrating on building the continent to the point where, at least, if not every country, some countries would have the integrity to approach some of these issues. Because if that is not done, and at the end of the day, the people's hearts is won towards coup leaders or military takeovers or rebels just because, not because they love rebels, but because they are target of democratic regimes, then it becomes a problem. So I think that we should have concerted efforts towards building the sub-region, building countries, and exactly ECOWAS must also be up and doing in addressing the economic challenges and not be so obsessed with military approach, because I think that at this point, Prof Vladimir said that ECOMOG has done a lot and all that. I think that, well, that would be fair to say they've done a lot, but I think that we've not been able to achieve the core mandate, right. And that is to bring, that, kind of stabilization for trade and other things, right, to go on. If, in fact, for countries that, become, fundamental, platform for trade, benefit, using the military alone, or even not alone, but centering and putting emphasis on military approaches, I don't think that it solves the fundamental problems. And so the two things is that building, an integrity, to address the challenges, and again, also looking at certain other avenues other than military approaches to solve the problem.
Right. I think that, Frederick, I think everybody will agree with you. And I think that the point Prof was making was that it was almost unavoidable that there would be a military presence, and therefore, even as a deterrent, the military aspect had to be thought about. Not that it was going to be the solution in and of itself. But I'm going to let both of them, gentlemen, respond very quickly to you, and then we're running out of times, and I've got so many questions. We may have to do a part 2. But gentlemen, I'll start with you, Doc, and then go to Prof to answer this question and his comments.
When we were conceiving the UN Sahel Support Plan as a blueprint to amplify the implementation of UN integration strategy, what was very clear to us was that the Sahel problem was not necessarily military. It's a problem that is quite developmental as well. Developmental in the sense that the issues of poverty, weak governance, the issues of exploitation of its natural resources, external influences, which is creating a lot of anger in the heart of the population, was one of the things that we dealt with. Then also the vast youth population and the joblessness. So the developmental imperatives around the Sahel was very, very important. That's why we came out with a counter narrative that the Sahel is not a basket of problems, but actually the Sahel is a land of prosperity. And you can, once you engender the peace, you'll be able to address some of the issues that are contained there. Because if you look at its vast natural resources, the vast human capital that you can invest in, and so on. But really, the fundamental issue of the Sahel is that you have a vast land estate which is not governed. We call it the so-called ungoverned spaces. I spent several years traversing in all these lands, and it's a vast width of land where you don't. There's no leadership, there's no administration, the population is left to
its own devices.
On its own devices. So then this is why the terrorists were able to actually advance there, and embed themselves in communities and create all types of different governance regimes that enable them to recruit the youth and start bringing in these whole problems that we see. And truly, the population of the Sahel region, they don't see coup d'etat as the answer. They actually like a certain type of governance that will provide the needs and aspirations that they do have. So if you take, for example, the Burkina, they see what Thomas Sankara did, not necessarily as a military person, but how he governed the country. He ran the country and the prosperity was bringing until it was toppled. Right, so that's what they latch onto. When Kabore was there, he was doing some wonderful things, and the population was actually respecting that, and they loved that to happen. So I wouldn't say that the Sahelian people really love military regimes. No, they like us.
That's where they've seen the benefits.
They have seen the benefits,
or had a share of their resources.
Exactly,
right?
And they really want to see good governance. They want to see things happening because they see they have great opportunity to develop themselves and also create jobs for the youth. And don't forget, Sahel used to be like the World Trade Center, right, where trading of international spices and all these things were passing through there. It's a land of kingdoms where they really know what peace and stability means to the integrity of a state, and they are very, very connected with each other. The Fulanis and all of this, they are a whole group of people that have the same culture and so on. And when you look at the agricultural products, the variety of agricultural products that you can have from there, the strategic mineral resources that you do have, the fisheries resources and all of these things, and the oil and gas deposits and everything, they see that is a land of prosperity and they really want to see something happen. But then the security situation is fundamental to being able to make all this sustainable development happen. And this is why, if you have a standby force that would act as a barrier to any incursion from terrorist state, it would help.
There's a benefit to it. That allows safe trade.
Correct.
An improvement in trade.
Exactly.
All right. Prof, thanks for your patience. You heard what Mr. Brooks had to say. Do you have any comments, any responses to that?
Hello?
Hello, Prof.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I understand the frustration of our brother, lack of progress, bad governance, etc., etc. It is precisely because of this that individual countries will have problems trying to develop on their own, their governance system and economic system. It is precisely because of these that countries decide to integrate. Integration brings about rapid economic development because we are creating a larger market, fluid market. We are creating community developed areas like railways. We don't have eco marine, for example. If you have goods here, you want to transfer them to Nigeria, you need to wait for Maersk or some Chinese boat to take them from Dakar to Lagos. We have no marine transport. Right. We have no eco air. We want to travel to France, you have to wait for a French air. You have to travel to Europe, you have to wait for some other airline. And these are the reasons why integrating really bodes well for a rapid economic development. We have community developments like the West African gas pipeline, whose gas can help develop a lot of countries along the coast. We have the West African power pool, so that you don't have doom so in one country and more power in another country. If we have railway lines crisscrossing West Africa, and you can only do this only through integrative efforts. And that's why we're saying, if you're doing this and there are miscreants who want to bring the things back, you need a community security.
Right.
The borders that are being crossed left and right and that sort of thing, if you have a community security, it aids in rapid development of the region. We are not saying we should turn our armed forces in West Africa into a standby force to forestall whatever. No. But that standby force is a bulwark to our development. So the fears expressed about our interlocutor are addressed through a community security kind of effort. Right. And I bet you, as I said, research has shown that without community security, your integration stands to falter. Look at the Sahelian states. They know this. Look, all the efforts that Traore is making on the economic front, people are happy left, right, center. They will come to naught. They'll come to a wall if by tomorrow there is something like more insurgency in this country. And that is why the AES, the Association of Sahelian States, have decided to have a community security. They signed a protocol for common security. Very soon they will put their armies together to help them forestall such untoward actions. And for me, it's not that I'm advocating for a standby force by all means to develop the countries. A standby force to back the efforts of ECOWAS. Right. That's what we are calling for.
Okay.
What he's alluding to about governance, no single government can go ahead away from bad governance. There's bad governance in Ghana, bad governance in Nigeria, bad governance everywhere. Corruption, no jobs, etc., etc. These can go away when we have ECOWAS as if we were one country, with all protocols and everything acting as one country, and therefore we can talk to each other and make sure that these things don't happen. In Europe, there may be corrupt governments, but then whatever happens within the corrupt area is dealt with quickly because they have the European Parliament and countries send their representatives even on party lines. Right. The parties, we have the Green Party, which is an European party, you have the Social Democrats, you have whatever it is. And if we want to go that way, to forestall the presence of bad governance and to bring about good governance and to bring about jobs, etc., then we need that type of thing that Europe has done. They have NATO as their party.
Right. Okay. And on that note, we're going to call it a holiday on this program today. Just very quickly, thanks to all of our listeners and contributors on WhatsApp as well. Just very quickly, the conversation on Ghana's role in Sahelian stability is long overdue. Glad to see innovative finance and security being linked so powerfully tonight. Kobna Yofi. Dr. Ishmael Dodoo's insights on using innovative finance as a regional development tool was spot on. Ghana has the potential to lead economically in the Sahel if we think smart. Abigail Otu. Loving how the 24-hour economy discussion is shifting from just Ghana to a regional framework. Makes total sense when we think about trade routes and cross-border productivity. Kevin Lindsay. Prof. Antwi-Danso's point on balancing diplomacy and military action in the Sahel was gold. Ghana can't afford to choose one over the other. We need both. Fazul Mohammed. The link between trade agreements and security is clearer than ever after tonight's session. Economic diplomacy is the new front line. Edem Tay. Kudos to both speakers tonight. If this town hall proves anything, it's that Ghana has thinkers and strategists ready to navigate complex regional dynamics. Now let's act on it. Barbara Hagan. Thank you for those comments. And I'm really going to have to appreciate our two speakers today. Thank you for your patience and for being part of this very meaningful conversation. And to our contributors first, Farouk Wahab and Mr. Brooks, thank you for your patience, for staying on, and for your insights as well as part of the program. And as we move to conclude, just very quickly, the voices, the panelists today were Dr. Ishmael Nii Amanor Dodoo, former senior UN diplomat and policy advisor for integrated strategy for the Sahel. Professor Vladimir Antwi-Danso, former dean and director of academic affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, and prior to that, director at LASIA, University of Ghana, Legon. They've been talking about Ghana and the Sahel, advancing trade, security, and regional influence through strategic diplomacy. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your contributions and your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.